Hey, what's up nerds? Today we're going to look at Volt, the original and still undisputed Sonic of Warframe.
I look like a kiwi!
In my last community post, I asked you guys what you wanted to see, and I really want to keep my promise of making a guide on every Warframe out there. So here we are, hoping these will teach some new players how to play Volt, and maybe some more experienced players some tips and tricks they didn't know yet. On the verge of a tip and trick, I want to show you ExpressVPN. I personally take internet security very serious, and I like to binge watch shows that are not currently available in my own country on, for example, Netflix. This service also allows you to mask your IP, completely bypassing geo restrictions, so you're able to get country-specific content or just hide yourself in online lobbies. That's why I teamed up with ExpressVPN to provide 3 months for free on an annual subscription. I've been using ExpressVPN for ages now, and I can't think of a more suitable product and company to offer you guys some great deals. So go visit expressvpn.com/Swagbraham for 3 months off an annual subscription. Link is in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's dive straight into Volt's abilities, then some builds, and of course some weapons to go along with that. Starting off with Volt's passive, Static Discharge. For every meter traveled on ground, Volt gains 5 points of electricity damage, ultimately capping at 1000 points. While this doesn't really do a lot, it's nice to have some sort of damage enhancing passive while you're scooting around and killing a bunch of enemy. Ability 1. Shock. Volt electrifies his enemies, dealing damage to a single target and chaining lightning to up to 6 nearby enemies, stunning them all into an electrified animation. The range of these chaining arcs can be modified with ability range, and the damage is affected by ability strength. The ability does not add to any other free elements like toxin, cold, or heat. I'd say, like mag, this is a cheap form of crowd control, stun locking a little group of high priority targets before taking them down and subsequently making sure you don't get damaged by them. It's a really nice ability in a pinch with some uses here and there. The Augment Shock Trooper creates a wave of energy traveling outward from Volt, granting Volt and nearby allies additional electricity damage to all attacks. This time the electricity damage is combined with any free elements on the weapon, meaning if you're running a radiation build, you can leave out Stormbringer on your primary weapon, but more to this when we come to the builds though. Ability number 2. Speed. Volt energizes the surrounding area, increasing not only his own mobility, reload speed, and melee attack speed, but also those of his allies in range. Speed is hugely impactful in most game modes, because you're not only a whole lot faster in terms of movement, but you can also attack faster with your melee weapon, and your reload speed is greatly increased, making your damage output that much more deadly. Recasting this ability doesn't add more speed, but refreshes the ability duration, which can also be modded. The speed itself is stackable with other speed mods and is affected by power strength mods. And yes, this also means it can be combined with stuff like Berserker Fury for insane attack speed. And what many allies of a Volt player do not know is that they can opt out of speed by backflipping. Aiming down sight and rolling while holding a backwards motion makes you backflip. This can be useful, especially if you have a Volt with a bunch of power strength. Now, using speed before switching to your Arcwing greatly increases your flight speed as well. The Augment Shocking Speed causes enemies to take 175 electrical damage when touched while under the effects of speed. This augment also carries over to Volt's allies, making for some cheap, small localized crowd control while speedrunning missions. Ability number 3. Electric Shield. Volt places a shield made of pure energy, providing cover in any and all situations. Now, Electric Shield has a lot going on for it, so let's get over the basics first. Electric Shield completely negates incoming damage. That means any and all damage is absorbed and can't get to you, with a tiny exception to weapons with innate punch through like the Comb, Ignis, Cyclone, and a few others. A total of 6 shields can be placed, and its duration is affected by ability duration. Enemies can walk through your shield though and start attacking you, so keep that in mind. Now, this can be mended somewhat by casting shock through a shield, electrifying it, which makes it deal more damage and stun the enemy. Electric Shield also gives Volt and his allies 50% electricity damage and a 200% critical multiplier when shot through. The electricity damage can be stacked by shooting through multiple electric shields, but the critical multiplier can not. Also, the critical multiplier is added after your weapon mods, meaning it'll pretty much double your weapon's critical multiplier. Volt can even pick up his electric shield, which makes it a lot smaller but enables Volt to become mobile with a front-facing shield. Embrace your inner Reinhardt and shield bash your enemies for fun.
Bring me another!
Electric Shield has two augments. The first one, Transistor Shield, which enables Volt's allies to pick up the shield without costing energy. Incoming damage on the shield partly gets added to the status Discharge passive. And the second one, Recharge Barrier, restores the shield of allies who pass through the shield by 35%. Now the last ability number 4, Discharge. Volt goes full rage mode and emits a powerful electric pulse that stun locks enemies and makes them emit arcs of electricity, shocking enemies who come close to them. The stun duration is affected by ability duration and the range is affected by ability range. Discharge damage and the arcs damage are affected by ability strength. The cool thing about this ability is that the more enemies affected, the more damage this ability does, meaning that if you're in a pinch and surrounded by enemies, you can deliver a fatal blow, decimate the whole group if you're strong enough. That also means that range, duration, and some strength are required if you build solely for this ability, which we will also get to later. Funnily enough, the ability can also trigger arcanes that need critical hits to activate. Now, enemies who are not in range of other enemies will not create arcs, but instead start damaging themselves after 4.5 second delays. Lastly, if shock is cast on an enemy affected by discharge, it creates an overcharge and bursts into an area of effect. The augment capacitance allows a percentage of damage dealt by discharge convert into shields for Volt and his allies. I don't personally find this augment very useful at all, but there might be some edge cases. I do admit this is a lot to take in, so let's just move over to some builds. Now, I will approach Volt a little different than how I usually do it in my how-tos, because Volt has so many great uses. Now, bursting through the bakery with build number 1, the cookie cutter build. This build focuses around pretty much every aspect of Volt's strengths, providing speed buffs, crowd controlling an area, and protecting himself and his allies from incoming damage. Starting off, we got Speed Holster. Yes, Speed Holster. I literally can't live without this mod, and I find that it adds to the whole speedy attitude of Volt in general. Very useful mod. Vigilante Pursuit to locate enemies and some critical chance boost on your primary weapon. Stretch, Auger Reach, Primed Continuity, and Auger Message for decent range and duration. Now do feel free to use non-primed continuity, it's not that big of a difference. Blind Rage, Intensify, Streamline, and Primed Flow for a bunch of strength, some efficiency, and a bigger energy pool. Again, do feel free to use the non-primed version. Lastly, some optional arcanes would be Arcane Energize and Arcane Strike. Arcane Energize isn't super necessary because you have a huge energy pool, but it's a nice to have kind of arcane anyway for this particular build since you're missing out on some efficiency. Arcane Strike is self-explanatory, it also just adds into the speed frame vibe. Next up would be the Elite Sanctuary Onslaught or ESO build. We can't deny Volt's use in ESO, and he's my favorite when it comes to solo clearing. Here we switch out the aura for Steel Charge for more melee damage, use Auger Reach, Stretch, Overextended, and Cunning Drift to get all the range we can get. This ensures that we can get close to a whole map when using Discharge, which this build is focused around. Umbro Intensify, Transient Fortitude, and Blind Rage are used to get some ability strength, upping Discharge's damage, Prime Continuity for some duration, and Streamline to not go completely out of energy. Again, arcanes are optional, but I'm using Arcane Energize and Arcane Strike again, they just make the most sense here. On we move to my personal Triathlon build. Now I want to emphasize that this is my personal build. It's not a best in slot by a long shot, but it lets me do Tricep solo comfortably and without a lot of hassle. We got Deadeye for increased sniper rifle damage and Coaction Drift to up the percentage of that. Natural Talent for cast speed. It's important to put your shields down fast. Primed Continuity, Constitution, and Narrow-Minded for a lot of ability duration, topping out the shield's duration by like 50 seconds. Leading Expertise and Streamline for a lot of efficiency since I don't want to run around with no energy on me. And lastly, Rolling Guard to go invincible for a few seconds and get rid of status effects if anything at all. Arcane wise, I run Arcane Momentum for faster reloads on my sniper and Arcane Nullifier for the guaranteed magnetic proc denial. I suppose you can run Arcane Rage, but it doesn't really do anything for me, so I don't use it here. I really like this build because it's a combination of quality of life and effective Volt usage. Now you can totally get rid of Intensify and use Shock Trooper. I don't have Shock Trooper, so I use Intensify and the second ability Speed for faster shooting and reloading. Last but not least is a bit of a fun build. It's the fastest Volt I could come up with in a few minutes, and it also uses Infested Mobility, which you can get from the helmet. The coolest thing about this build is that when Infested Mobility and Speed are activated and you enter Arcwing, then dash and melee, you can launch yourself across the map. I won't go in depth on this build, but just show it for a second, pause if you need to. So we know what Volt does, how we build him, but how do we actually play him? I personally say it depends on your own playstyle a lot. If you like melee weapons and smashing that E button, then going for some speedy and flashy playstyle by jumping around a lot is your go-to. If you like to control areas, you can just plop down your shields around you and use Discharge to CC your enemies and finish them off with some bullets. I personally play a mix between the two, completely dependent on the kind of people I play with and the mission at hand. Now let's go over some of the weapons. Weapon-wise, I'd suggest a Kuva Comb, a Piranha Prime, and the Twin Croaker. Your speed allows you to use the Kuva Comb for some nice status application or simply to mow down your enemies faster. Piranha Prime are pretty obvious, it's a handheld shotgun, what not to like, and with speed you can get those 3 kills easily, so you get like a ghost piranha on your second hand as well, making you even deadlier. The Twin Croaker are an awesome combination between status and critical build, which will serve you well no matter the content you're faced with. So that sums up how to Volt. I'd like to take a second to thank each and every one of you for watching this video, and if you're here at the end, I'd like to share my thoughts on why I'm still doing Warframe content even though I said I wouldn't. The last couple of weeks I've been in between fronts when it comes to making videos. I really want to switch things up, but I feel like I don't know enough about other games yet to give an educated opinion about them. However, I will start doing more non-Warframe stuff in addition to more Warframe stuff. Specifically, I'd like to go into the reviewing of games and discussing things around the gaming scene. If you're cool with that, I'd love for you to subscribe and join me on the journey to start new things and go a different road. I hope to see you there. Stay safe out there, Tenno. Later.